you. I appreciate it. Oh, we've been having just a wonderful, wonderful day. The last 2 days have been so inspiring in terms of learning. Yeah, I've just been loving it like everyone else. So this is so wonderful to have you as part of the LND Cares Career Growth Summit and talking about health, vitality, and viability. Who is listening my piece?
I attended a few sessions in the mindset track.
Mm-hmm.
They have some great insights for people, and just if they hear like the similar things over and over, then that will retain.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think, here as we look to, particularly around vitality and viability, as we, it's that continuum of how are we making choices based upon principles, or what are we trying to accomplish?
Uh-huh.
And, it's not either or. It's not, you're not extrovert or you're introvert. It's not, here you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. It's, there's different pieces that would need to be put under consideration. So we're really excited to have you talking to us, Anna, about who's threatening my cheese. So welcome, everybody. Great to have you here. And we look forward to you taking it away, my dear. And anything you need from me, I'm going to be following the session feed as well as the Q&A, and here in the background as support.
Excellent. Hello, everybody, and welcome. And our session today is about health, vitality, and viability. Now, there's a question that maybe you may be curious about where it comes from. Who is threatening my cheese? And this comes from, I think it's related to, actually Liz came out with this great title for this session. And it's related to a book that was written by Spencer Johnson, who moved my cheese. And it is about a perspective or different perspectives we may have on the change and how change impacts us. So this session today is to share some concepts with you and also provide you some tools and strategies. And with all of my sessions, I'm also in the learning and development space. We're going to experience a couple of things together so you can have a sense of how it feels and what it may feel like to you. So before we dive in, let's take a deep breath. Excellent. And if at any point you have any questions, if you want me to pause to answer any questions, just please let me know in chat, and I can see the chat. Okay, so what we're going to cover some key concepts. We will practice or experience a couple of things as well, and you will walk away with tools and strategies that you can apply right away. And I will have additional resources for you that you can also use after the summit, after the session. And all of this comes from the flow of transformation framework that I developed a few years ago based on my over 20 years of experience in business simulations, experiential learning, and psychology, and in change management. So when it became very clear to me that the pace of change was going so fast that we needed to have new tools in place to help people really embrace change. And of course, what we are experiencing right now is 10 times, 1,000 times more than the organizational changes we experienced just before the COVID. So let me ask you this question, and let's put this in chat. Let's start with this. What feelings have you experienced during this time, close to a year now? It's actually a year up until this point. Helplessness, excellent. Anxiety, yeah, all valid. Anything else? Any other feelings? Just reflect. Maybe not today, but 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 1 month ago. Relief, anxiety and relief. Lack of control. Yep. Excellent. Yeah, just keep typing them as they come. And these are all valid, and we'll go through why that happens and why we feel what we feel and how we can help ourselves feel better. Because the priority is really in this kind of environment or in any environment is we first have to feel better. We cannot lead people, we cannot create excellent programs if we're under stress. So excellent. How to make sense in crazy upside down world. Yep. And for helping forge a path forward. Excellent. Okay. So change and ambiguity. We have experienced a tremendous pace of change up to before COVID-19 entered the global space. And organizations have been going through a lot of change, a lot of systems change, mergers and acquisitions, leadership changes, restructuring, so all kinds of changes. And as I mentioned, the pace of those changes have become so great that the workplace was already stressful in many organizations. And now when COVID hit the global arena, global space, like everywhere, right, we experienced another layer of change that made it so very challenging for all of us in all dimensions. And during times of change, what we see from the outside is complaining. People can be complaining, confrontational, unhappy, disengaged, withdrawn, 9 to 5, or indifferent. And how people may feel on the inside is imposed, stressed, unhappy, insignificant, anxiety, what we saw in the chat, helplessness. People may feel they're not important, demotivated, that there's no future, indifferent and powerless or helpless. Very, very similar to what you have in chat. And what are the outcomes of when we are seeing something from the outside and how we are feeling on the inside? From a leadership perspective, right? There is a huge gap there. But from just an overall change resilience perspective, there is a limited performance in this kind of environment. There's limited creative thinking and limited collaboration. People are not as open to collaborate. The innovation is not going to flourish if we're under stress. And what I want to show you on this slide is it's actually a research on neuroscience and motivation. Have you heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? If you just type yes in chat, probably most of you have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Usually it's presented as a triangle, as a pyramid. And for this comparison, I put it more in a linear format. But we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which speaks to our very basic needs, such as safety, food and shelter, and belonging and esteem and self-actualization. And then I compare this Maslow's hierarchy of needs to human social needs that were developed by Matthew Lieberman and David Rock, and also the motivational needs that came from self-determination theory and David Pink in his book Drive. So as you can see, there's an overlap, there's a correlation between all the different three models. Now look at this just from kind of high level and putting things in perspective. Think about what has been impacted by COVID-19, by the environment, by the pandemic. If you look at these things, these are our basic needs, safety needs, social needs, and motivational needs. If you look at these things, what has been impacted by COVID-19, by the pandemic? And you can type up in chat. Anyone? So if we look at these things, basically the challenge that we have been experiencing over the last year is because all of these things were impacted. And they were impacted in our professional lives, in our personal lives. So it's all over. It's 360 degrees impact in all different dimensions. And this is why This is why it has been so challenging, because when we were experiencing changes in our workplace, then we could go back home and re-energize, take a break, find some peace, and just deal with that change, deal with that challenge at work. But when we go back home and there are more, we don't even go back home, we stay at home, we work at home, and there's so many limitations when we in those, all of this whole environment, that we don't really have an escape. We don't really have any place to help ourselves unless we begin to create that space for ourselves. And this is why it has been so challenging, because we were hit in all of the directions. And of course, our systems, our bodies, our minds, our emotions have been so much contracted in response to that. And we'll take a look at the kind of the fundamentals, the concepts behind this. So traditionally, the emotional cycle has been taught like this. There's a shock, and there's some anger, denial, and then we climb up of that cycle. And when I looked at this a few years back, when I developed the model, the flow to transformation model, and I layered all of the change cycles that organizations were going through, it's cycle over cycle. There's not a completion and then the new cycle begins. It's the new cycle begins before the prior ended. Now, layer on top of this the COVID situation, where all of these changes and constraints were imposed on us in a way, right? Nobody asked for COVID to come in, and we didn't choose the COVID to really enter our lives. So there's the tremendous stress of all of these changes that we have to deal with. And on top of all of the constraints, also organizations, in order to pivot, in order to continue to provide services, to meet the demands, to stay in the market, to stay alive, the organizations had to implement new changes within the organizations just to adjust to the new market conditions. Vendors were impacted, customers were impacted, so the whole value chain was impacted, and everybody had to pivot, everybody had to make some changes. So it is tremendous adjustment also on that end. And of course, the impact on jobs, the construction of jobs, and people, and many of you are finding yourself being in transition, looking for the next opportunity, your next dream job. So the multitude of speed of change outpaces human capacity to adjust, and this is why we need new tools and we need new strategies, maybe that we didn't need before, that we didn't feel we had to have. And that's why it's important for us. It's an extremely important time for us to really tap inside ourselves, because we have unlimited capacity inside ourselves to overcome any challenges that come at us. There's an unlimited source, and that source is inside. And I'm going to show you a couple of things how you can tap into that source, so you're always into the positive space. And we'll also talk about why it's important to stay in a positive space. And for our learning and development professionals, all of you and all of us in the summit, we are in a very unique position, because we have to be able to adjust to changes and challenges that come at us from a personal perspective. And not only from that, we are impacting learners through the learning we create. And here we have to understand the kind of stress and emotions that our learners are going through as they're adjusting to changes. And we also can use learning to help people embrace change, because learning has an underlying, a natural capacity to activate positive neurons in our brain. That's where the power of learning is. So as learning and development professionals, there are a few dimensions that we really can use to create a greater impact. But in order for us to do that, we need to be able to tap inside and really build that change resilience and change agility. And on the other hand, if you're in a transition, or if you know you're going to be in a transition, if you're looking for something new, then your ability to adjust to the changes and challenges impacts how you show up. If you show up from a place of fear, and that fear is a very natural state given all of the changes that are hitting us, then then it's going to come. It's going to come through energy. It's going to come through how you speak, how you describe what you did. So it's going to come. It's going to come across through the level of confidence that you portray. So all of that, how you show up, will be impacted. So that's why it's important for you to really step inside and apply tools and strategy. Practice those tools and strategies so you're always on top of your game. And it's not by pushing through. It's not by pressing everything inside and packing everything inside. It's really by bringing your enormous resources to overcome the challenges, whatever challenges come at you. So that's why the role of L&D professionals is so critical in times like this. But it starts with you, right? It starts with taking care of yourself, building that vitality within yourself, adjusting to the movement of cheese, if you can say in those terms. So just being flexible. But that ability to be flexible comes through your own inner work and through applying tools and strategies. So, and this is where I'm going to show you actually the 5-step model, the flow to transformation. So if our final step is change resilience, right? When we have collaboration, we are engaged, we have creative thinking, and learning and development profession is very creative because we create learning experiences, and it's not, there are certain parameters to it that we follow, certain processes, but it also an open floor for ideas of how you can make things more effective, more engaging, and better for other learners, especially when they're under change and under stress. So if our final step is change resilience and collaboration, so how do we get there? I'm going to take you through these 5 steps very quickly, but you get an idea and when we're going to practice. So the foundations are that it all works the same in all of us. When we experience change, our brain perceives it either as a threat or as a reward. And of course, everything we have experienced so far, majority of what we have experienced is perceived by our brain as a threat to our survival, to our basic needs, safety, food, shelter, and health. And the way we respond to that works the same in all of us. It's kind of animal instinct, and works the same in all of us. How we respond to that change depends on our individual psychology and our own patterns and set of beliefs and things that we developed since we were born. Now, the reason why we want to work through that is because when we are in that reactive and that responsive state, in the defensive state, we're blocking our own potential. So I want to do a quick exercise for you. If you have a piece of paper, draw this circle down and just describe yourself when you're totally in balance, when you're totally at peace, when you feel happy, when you feel inspired. You may even know a place where you feel this way. So just draw a circle. If you don't have anything to write down, just to visualize or think about some things, how you would describe yourself. And that's for you. You don't have to share this. And the things that usually come up when I have these conversations and all the workshops I do is they fall into these main words or keywords: calm, kind, whole, curious, content, creative, connected, open-minded, and compassionate. Did you have anything similar to this? Excellent. Yeah, excellent. So all of us, we all on the inside, we all have this enormous unlimited capacity to be calm and kind and open-minded and compassionate and connected. And what happens when we experience change is all of this in our response, in our defensive response, which is there's nothing wrong with that, it all gets covered up. And we get contracted, we get boxed in, we clam up. Some people can become a little more confrontational. There could be anger, which is totally okay. But the reason we want to work through that is because we're limiting that enormous place that we have inside. Now, above your circle, write down situations when you didn't feel in balance, when you felt that anxiety, when you felt helpless, when you felt out of control, things were out of control. So just write those things down. and those situations, and how you felt in those situations as well. Or those situations, how you felt, and how you responded to those situations. So what you wrote down, that's more of your, like, if you see the pattern, that's your protective response to change, to uncertainty, to that threat that we experience. And the goal actually is for us to learn how to recognize when we are in our protective state, so that we can clear that, not push it down, not push through it, not ignore it, not criticize ourselves, but so we can clear those protective reactions and really tap into our natural state. The natural state was inside that big circle. Self-mastery, that's applying the different tools to be able to recognize when you are in that stress mode and using various techniques on clearing them. Again, no pushing through, don't judge yourself, don't criticize yourself, but it's really just listening to the pains that came up, because all of this is coming, all those reactions come from, because it's painful. You know, we don't have our needs met, we don't feel control, and all of this is coming up, and we're responding from that pain. This is how we develop self-mastery. That's the third step in the model. So first, the foundations. No, there's nothing wrong with our reactions. Second is learn to recognize things, or the self-awareness, we often call that. Third is build some practices in your everyday situations where you practice things to help you understand where those reactions come from. And some things that you can practice is visualization, breathing, meditation, gratitude. All of this will provide an enormous connection for you with your inside resources. Now, and this is where motivation and learning comes in. As I mentioned in the beginning, the 4 elements of motivation are autonomy, or I showed you on the slide, is autonomy, sense of relatedness, sense of purpose, and sense of mastery. And all 4 were greatly impacted in this COVID environment. So in this step, what we do is really to understand what is being impacted for you the most, what is being compromised, and how can you offset it in other areas, not in that particular project or a situation, but how you can balance out your lack of control or lack of autonomy in certain situations, lack of relatedness, right? How can we offset all of that? And learning activates positive neurons in our brains. So anything that you can create for yourself, to learn anything you want. The very important here is that you learn by choice, then implement that into your schedule. And as a learning and development professional, you want to open as many learning opportunities as possible for your learners, because they are experiencing the same changes as you are. And this is how we get to our final step, which is change resilience, and how we make it sustainable. Only at this stage, we can start to reframe from a problem to an opportunity. Until we clear those blocks and until we clear our emotions, this work, this final step, will be limited, because we're still operating from our defense mechanisms. So a couple of resources for you, and I have a link where you can download them. And I can put that in chat as well, so we can.
I'm on it.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. Yeah, for some reason I cannot type.
You're good, you're good.
Excellent. All right, so, and we've gone through through this at a very, very high level. And what I want to ask you here is, part of learning and development, part of learning experiences, what was your biggest aha in what we covered in this 25 minutes? What was your biggest aha? Thank you, Liz.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I think one of those aspects, for me around what was for me the valuable piece is really reflecting where am I wanting to go, and what are those things that at times when I'm so much in that busyness, you don't necessarily reflect upon what's really and then important and what will make a difference in terms of what I really want to be having happen.
Yeah, excellent. Anyone else?
Yeah.
And what can you apply right away? Maybe some practices, maybe some reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to wrap up, the key is for us to remember that first, if you're in transition looking for a job, just make sure that you clear the fears, you work through your fears, because it impacts how you show up. You work through the anxiety using various techniques. Some of what I share, there are also other techniques out there you can find. And so that you show up with your best self, confident and open. It impacts what comes into your path also, because a lot of it is about energy, right? If we're in a negative state, we attract more of the negative things toward us. Remember that for us to create the most effective learning, we want to be in our best self state, because then we can come up with all great solutions and great idea for our learners. And we need to adjust our learning and development programs with understanding that our learners are going through those stresses and anxiety levels and everything else as well.
Yeah.
Any questions?
So, and to that point, so with the questions, so we're going to be actually going back to the summary of the day, but we will also be joining on the table. So during the talent fair, what we're going to be talking about those career steps and those career stages. So right now we're going to go to a break, but then please be sure to connect back up with Anna for those discussions, really looking at, what did you learn and what are we applying as we continue down this learning journey together.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everybody. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. We'll be happy to share resources and insights that I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Liz, for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Wonderful to have you here.